I'm Joanna Forrester. I'm very excited to be talking to you guys. And actually, I don't actually often get to talk to you guys. I mostly tend to talk to more classic, traditional publishers, ad tech companies, sometimes agencies, sometimes brands. No, I'm just kidding. I talk to those people, but I don't talk to them so much about the kind of magic and difficult and complicated worlds that you guys live in. So this is going to be interesting. Can we start actually maybe with just super quick introductions? Allie, you want to go first?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Allie Resch, and I lead LinkedIn's global content partnerships.
Thank you, Allie. Jason?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jason Wire. I help lead creative strategy at Pinterest.
Hello, I'm Christina Keller, and I lead the creative intelligence team within Meta.
Tom Chirico. I lead creative development for a team called Twitter Next.
Ooh, where to begin? Okay, so what are some of the most creative ways that you get excited by how brands are using your platform? I'm going to spontaneously pick on Jason first.
Thank you. We get a lot of ideas from creative agencies and from partners about how to hack the platform, how to do...
Like hack in a good way or hack in a bad way?
How to use a feature in a way that isn't intended, you know?
But is that good or bad?
Well, I think what I was going to say is that the ideas that I find most innovative are actually like using the product in the way that it's intended, but maybe with a little bit of a twist. And that's, on Pinterest, we're showing you what you want to see, and it's very contextual in the way that you're searching for. Yeah. There's actually a way to like intercept people in a moment in a way that you're showing them something that they didn't already know that they wanted when they're searching for it. Right, so for example, recently Jameson, they released a new product called Jameson Orange. And obviously they showed this to people looking for cocktail recipes, planning holiday parties, but they also know that people come to Pinterest to build mood boards, to look for orange wall color ideas, which is a trending sort of like color palette. And so they actually did an entire like color takeover and color interception as a way to kind of reach people in that open mindset. But with a product they weren't necessarily looking for, but were nonetheless inspired by.
Well, first of all, I love that. Also, orange, yes, awesome. Maybe I want to call you CK, but should I call you Christina?
You can choose.
Thank you. So, CK, for you, I mean, you guys have sort of a bunch of environments that brands can work in. First of all, how often do they come and say, I want just that. I want the meta?
Normally, they actually are quite differentiated in where brands want to play.
Good. Good.
Which is good, whilst we always try to showcase the breadth of the platforms, right? Because across Facebook, Instagram, Oculus, and WhatsApp, we have 3.6 billion users worldwide. That is a big space to play, and it's all carried by people's wish to connect. So this is wonderful. I guess coming back to your point, the importance for me is if brands move into these spaces, it needs to be very intentional. Like, why do I want to be on Instagram? Do I actually want to connect to culture, to certain communities that circle around passion areas? Or do I want to have a service campaign that is rather living within WhatsApp, where customer needs can directly be solved, right? So I guess the purpose of every brief directs where ideas live, and we never just umbrella solution across all our platforms. We really try to see what's the business need and then direct the ideas.
I mean, ideally, that's wonderful. You might sometimes run into the client urge to sort of streamline and simplify, but I'm going to come back to that one. I mean, Allie, your platform is somewhat unique relative to these guys. I mean, you're all unique. You're all very unique. Can you talk a little bit about LinkedIn specifically?
Yes, and what CK just mentioned about intention, and I think Nancy spoke to it earlier, really resonated with me representing LinkedIn. We recently published a study with work in Cannes Lions, and we found that evaluating over 400 campaigns in the B2B space over the last 10 years, the most effective B2B marketers invest in long-term brand building, and they make an emotional connection with their audience. And far too many brands, as I'm sure you've experienced as hopefully your members, lead with a rational appeal in their B2B marketing. And when you're in a space where at any given time, 95% of your audience is not in market, that's not a way to connect. That's not a way to make that emotional connection with your audience. And so for us, it is about being intentional and purposeful, and not just taking your TV commercial and repurposing it and running it in the LinkedIn feed. But the brands who are really effective on LinkedIn are the brands who tell interesting stories and they spark conversations that matter.
So maybe for you, Tom, like Twitter is again also a specific and unique environment. How do you think about this notion of kind of long-term relationship building in Twitter, or do you say that's not the point, or you tell me?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think that, first and foremost, one of the things that we've done at Twitter and we've had to work hard at is to really crystallize our value proposition both to users and to brands and businesses. And on the creative side of things, we've gotten even more specific, which is that for ideas on Twitter, we say the best ideas are the ones that are worth talking about, with Twitter being like the conversation layer of the internet. And it's for an idea to be great, it needs to either drive conversation or help people connect to a conversation that's happening in culture. So when I think about durability of an idea, or like timeless ideas and building those like long-term relationships, they're the ones that help brands continually connect with a conversation that we know is going to be happening. One of the great examples, I think, is the iconic work that American Express has done around Small Business Saturday, and how we've evolved that idea with them year over year over year to help small businesses have real conversations with people on that all-important Saturday shopping day. So I think it's less about, in some ways, like a long-term repeated relationship with the brand and an idea like that, and more about owning an occasion that that every Saturday after Thanksgiving, American Express is going to be introducing you to great small businesses and helping you talk about small businesses in your area.
I mean, that's maybe a good segue, because to something that I find so fascinating, and scares me a little bit, which is balancing kind of brand created and brand owned with putting your brand out in the world, which just is beautiful, and I imagine also a little bit scary. So maybe we'll start, Jason, with you. Like, how do you help brands work through this brand created and owned versus sort of, your user base, your fans, taking control of it?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. A lot of brands bring ideas to Pinterest, and they have a sense of that they know what pinners are going to do with that idea. So the Home Depot or Lowe's obviously is going to put furniture and design ideas out for pretty obvious purposes, but they'll start to actually be able to see what the names of the boards are that people are saving them to in a way that highlights something that maybe they didn't expect. And so maybe they thought that their consumer was planning living room designs or a bathroom renovation, but actually the products that they're putting out there and the ideas that they're putting forth are being used for something a little bit more specific, like redoing a room that's going unused in the basement, right? Or turning a kid's room into a new home office or something like that. So they're actually, by putting an idea out there, they're able to sort of listen and see what somebody decides to do with it. Any idea that's effective on Pinterest is, going to drive someone to take an action, and we want to see what action somebody takes.
And then what?
And then I think continue to bring them ideas, worth doing, and follow it up in that way.
That's hard. I mean, but also the magic of it, right? So, CK, I have to ask you this question, right? Like the brand letting go, or the brand maybe even explicitly deciding to put the brand in someone else's hands.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Of course, it's my pleasure. So I want to come back to the point that our platforms are there for people to connect, right? So every brand that wants to play on one of those platforms has to consider this principle. This is a platform for connection. So as a brand, I have to connect with customers as well, or be an anchor point for them to connect. And this brings us in a situation where brands can no more broadcast. We had this conversation, like it's not good to put content out there and just cut it down if people don't have anything to interact with. We need to make sure that people can participate in the stories that we build on our social platforms. And I feel this is the first and most important starting point. And we normally try to translate this into two core principles that make really good brand interactions on our platforms. And the first is acknowledging the cultural codes that our communities create on the platforms. And this is the tricky space, right? Where brands that might have grown over decades, that have a very strong DNA, suddenly have to live in a playful Instagram environment, right? And appear in Instagram stories. And so where does my super slick TV spot translate into something that looks like whiskers on Instagram stories? And like yesterday I spoke to my Mars clients that you did so well, because the brand DNA doesn't have to get lost just because we transfer into another environment. You have your brand cues, you have the silver table, you have the cat mask, you have your color coding and typography, and these are features that work platform agnostic, and so they should for sure be there, whilst there might be nuances such as stickers or visual collage style that you would never apply ATL, because it just would make your brand look ridiculous. So it's contextual language. And then the second thing I feel is interactivity and really inviting people in to build. There are so many ways to ask, to collaborate, get inputs of your customers weaved into the campaign, have them respond, build this into the next iteration of the campaign. So you really have this ambition to build and move through this together.
Do you want to take that one too, Tom? Otherwise,
Yeah. I think that, and maybe it's my own insecurity showing, but I feel as though oftentimes when people think about the risks of putting your brand out there, sometimes they think of that like reply tweet. That the brand might initially get. I've literally sat in meetings before where the CMO of a company has brought a binder of replies to a brand's tweet before, and it's something that we're really aware of, and obviously take brand safety as a matter of human safety and put a lot of effort behind it. But from a creative perspective, I think that one of the things that we were really interested in knowing this year was understanding the evolving attitudes of consumers towards brands on Twitter. I think that everyone at this point is kind of aware of brand Twitter and sort of the social media voice that's been cultivated from great brands like Wendy's over the years, but has often been copied and mimicked by many brands who, if you look at how they communicate across other platforms or even in their own stores or products, like don't it all sound like that? They feel like they need to speak in that voice. So we commissioned this research and we partnered with Contagious for something that we called a Real Talk, which was basically surveying close to 10,000 people worldwide across 8 different countries on what they liked, they didn't like, and what they wanted to see from brands. And one of the most interesting things that we pulled out from this research was that people valued brands that were distinctive most, and they didn't mind when brands actually spoke to some and weren't for all necessarily. So we actually wanted to unpack that a little bit more. So we looked at this point that I'm making. We looked at those replies to 20 iconic brand tweets. We actually looked at 3 years worth of replies, and we analyzed the data behind all of those replies that they got from people. And what we found in the emoji use was that for brands that people considered most distinctive, for every clapping emoji, for instance, so for every 10 clapping emojis they got in response, they would maybe get 2 middle fingers. Or for every 7 heart emojis, they would get 1 sad face. And it was just super interesting to me because it's a recognition that the brand knew that they were going to be really distinctive to an audience that they cared about, and that there were going to be some people that might have been detractors, but they wanted to be distinctive and establish a super relevant tone of voice for who they are. And I think that kind of bravery is really what's kind of pulling brands apart from the pack these days.
This sort of sets me up for my next question, which is a little bit of a tough one. Sorry, Allie, because I'm going to make you go first. No, I'm not. Whoever wants to take it, who's brave. How do you balance consumer experience with ad monetization? How many brands are too many brands? How many brands can be distinctive when there are so many brands on some of these platforms? You don't have to go first. Jason now has to go first.
I think on Pinterest, if we're doing our job right, you don't even notice the ads because on Pinterest people are looking for ideas to take action on, and the best way to do that often is to buy a product that can let you do it, or to use a service that can empower you to make a next step and change in your life. So I think in some ways it's finding just the right environment in which to get
I want that to be true. I really, truly do. But I will say, having had a conversation with Nancy Reyes at TBWA, she was not shy about it. She said these platforms are polluted. They're losing some of their specialness and they're getting polluted. I mean, really, truly, as a business, how do you think about long term the balance ideally they would work perfectly together, but like, let's be honest. How do you think about the balance? Now I'm going to pick on you, Anna, and then I'm going to pick on the rest of you.
Well, I think just going back to the sort of sea of sameness where everyone's promoting the same messages, it's about authenticity and what your brand stands for. And the most effective marketers on LinkedIn are promoting their brand purpose. They're sharing their mission. They're sharing the initiatives they're doing. They're sharing their progress. They're leading conversations about change, whether it's in the diversity, inclusion, and belonging space, and sustainability. If you look on the platform now, you see this incredible body of pride-related content that's being shared. I'm not sure if this goes to the monetization question, but I think a lot of it has to do with differentiation and the respect that brands have for the platform. Because to your point, Jason, like, you want the content to be so valuable, that experience to feel so connected to the environment that you're in, that someone appreciates it just as much as something that's being shared organically by someone they've elected to follow. And if you look on our platform, like, brands like Microsoft and their Unlocked campaign, for instance, is a really great example of a brand who's taking their customers and their employees and putting their stories front and center, which helps strike that balance of authenticity of, like, whether it comes from the brand or whether it comes from individuals, and how you kind of manage that. But I would say, don't just show up in June to have those conversations.
Totally.
These are some things that you want to be advocating for year-round as part of a long-term strategy.
So maybe for something like Instagram, which is sort of naturally a scroll kind of environment, it's busier with brands than it was even a year ago. How do you think about that as an organization?
Well, this year, our leader communicated a big pivot towards the metaverse, right? And so within a 10-year roadmap, we have different buckets of monetization as entire company. And for sure, currently the ads business pays for what will be the commerce business within the next 5 years, and then the metaverse, the 10-year roadmap. As an umbrella brand, I'm super comfortable that we actually have investments in currently ad-free spaces that will be amazing brand experiences that live in horizon worlds or in between the physical and the virtual world, whilst we for sure still have hardcore DR clients that advertise for hundreds of thousands of euro a month on our platforms. And I can't deny that for sure. Sometimes you go through the feed, and as mentioned before, you find more brands being present there than private people. In this case, I can just go on to the nuance we try to bring to individual client and creative partner conversations, where we say, please don't try to be everywhere. Look at the brief, the business problem. Let's then decide where you best play with this ad. I want to furthermore refer to one advantage that social media brings, which is the targeting and the specificity in the ads delivery. So if we're intentional about whom we want to engage with, we can be very clear in the content creation, making this relevant for a certain amount of people, the targeting and delivery, in order to really grant relevance for the individual as much as we can.
Okay. So, I mean, yet another good segue, I think, because the measurement conversation feels really important. Knowing that marketing is an engine of growth, and I think we all believe that marketing is an engine of growth. Brands genuinely want to understand why, but they also need to demonstrate that the investments that they are making are sound investments. So, how do you think about helping brands with the measurement thing? There's the easiest stuff and there's the hard stuff. Tom, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, one, I think creativity that works is the best kind of creativity. I think we can all agree on that. At Twitter, we've taken really seriously our mission to make conversation and the impact of conversation more measurable. So we've done a number of different studies and brought to market a number of different measurement solutions that truly analyzes the impact conversation has on brand attributes, on sales, on recall, et cetera. One of the most interesting things that we found in some of these studies is that just a 3% increase in conversation about a brand or its product can lead to a 10% increase in offline sales. So really, we like to say that Twitter is an engine of influence. When conversation happens on Twitter, it rarely just stays on Twitter. It typically spreads to the news media and other channels shortly thereafter. So certainly, from a measurement perspective, quantifying the value of that conversation starting on Twitter, spreading on Twitter, to actually people either clicking to shop or going to store has been important. And that's probably been priority number one for us from a measurement perspective this
Are
year.
they bringing that sort of desire to you, or are you saying, we really think it's important that you also think about the sort of long-term business opportunity and business value that's going to be created?
So of course, it'd be fictitious if I were to say that advertisers and agencies weren't demanding this. Of course, we should be. But this is actually something that proactively, as I kind of started the talk by saying our kind of laser focused strategy on being about driving conversation. Being about driving conversation from business means proving the business value of conversation. So there's proactive investments being made in this area, and we're going out to the market in a very intentional way around some of these measurement solutions versus simply just responding to the hey, did it work question.
So, Allie, for you, no shade on B2B, but it tends to be a very long sales cycle. It tends to be big deals with lots of stakeholders. It's hard. Measurement is hard. Can you talk a little bit about sort of how you're helping brands with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, like you mentioned, sort of at the end of the day, a KPI for a B2B marketer typically is lead generation or sales, right? And so many marketers come to LinkedIn and their primary KPI, their exclusive KPI is lead gen, and they're evaluating CPA. And all of their campaigns are meant to drive bottom funnel actions. And what we've found through research is when brands invest in brand building on the platform in conjunction with lead gen, a brand to demand strategy, they acquire 60% more leads. And so we try to help them sort of connect those dots and make sure that kind of every aspect of the funnel marketing that they execute on LinkedIn is measured and addressed effectively.
Well, I wanted to ask you how hard a sell that is with your clients, but I think we're running out of time, and I really want to quickly ask you guys about the role of technology and automation, maybe specifically, and adjacently, applications of AI. So how are you helping, inside your organizations, how do you think about this? And also, how are you helping your clients sort of balance what you automate and give to the machines versus what the humans need to do? You, I think, and then we might have to wrap. Go ahead. Yeah, it was you. Okay. Actually, I want to hear from Jason too, so go ahead.
Yeah, so we are investing a lot in AI, and actually the role it can play as a creative consultant alongside the ads creation process. And it can have different roles. It can bring insights that help create the right ad, the right concept, right, to build on. It can generate different iterations of a certain creative proposal, like given one copy, and it will make it 100 different ones that make sense, right? That set the right context.
That
it's
makes
fascinating.
sense. That's the hard part, right?
It's the
that
hard
makes sense
part, exactly. And then we have augmentation, where we say we have one ad, but we want to translate it into 10 different audience interpretations. And the last bit is for our clients and their ads to arrive within the right audiences. So that's the delivery part. And we explore AI across the entire process, always knowing we might need human interpretation at some points for this to make sense. I really love the fact that it decomplexifies our client's life and that it can shed light into some things that have been squishy for us as platforms, as marketers for years. So does ad and a certain creative concept drive relevance or trust? We can draw this correlation. I could have a gut feeling. AI can give the proof. And so I think it's fascinating. Highly recommended. Open for conversations on this.
I'd love to hear from all of you, but Tom, go next, because I'm sure you have a
I think that from a creative perspective, when we think about technology and automation, we think about the idea first, and also how we can make the idea easier and more empathetic for the brand to be able to execute. So what I mean by that is if we remember the dark old days of social, like the 2013, 2014 era, where you'd have a war room with like smelly food around the Super Bowl, and it'd be all about kind of like jumping in and replying all at the one time. Everyone thought that real-time response, you needed a war room of people to do. And we know that when brands respond to consumers on Twitter, they think more favorably about the brand, they continue to engage with them, et cetera, et cetera. So one of the technology investments we've made is how do we help automate that, but in an empathetic and permissible way. So what I mean by that is that we've created a piece of technology where essentially brands can automate different responses to users based on their permission and an action that they've taken. So I'll give a quick example of this. We worked with the Martin Agency and Oreo this year on a campaign called Oreoscope. Looking at the conversation on Twitter, there's two things really that people send thousands of tweets every day about Oreo. What their favorite Oreo is and how they like to eat Oreos. You're all probably thinking right now, oh, I like twisted or scrape the cream off, et cetera. And that's true. It's just like a human insight. We also know that their Gen Z target who talked about Oreos really likes talking about their zodiac signs. So we thought to ourselves, like, how do we combine these two things? And yeah, it's true. How do we combine these two things through technology in a really delightful way? So we built this system where if you like a call to action tweet from Oreo, we automatically analyze your Twitter persona. So your display name, how many people you follow, how many tweets you've liked when you joined Twitter. And we use that information instantaneously to then automatically reply back to that user from Oreo with their Oreoscope. So which Oreo they might be and how they might eat that Oreo. And by the way, a link to purchase their personalized pack of Oreo cookies with their Twitter handle on it. So there's little instances like that where I think technology can actually make an idea more personal. But at the same time, the user's taking that first action to want to make that engagement with them.
I mean, that maybe is the key, though, like
Yeah.
how you create personalized experiences without it feeling like intrusive.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do either of you guys want to weigh in on this one? Otherwise, but I want to hear from you.
Yeah, I would say, from a machine learning, AI, doing things that humans can't do perspective.
totally.
One thing that we've are always investing a lot in is how can we create the right level of connections to understand what someone's taste is, and then also how their taste might expand. And so in that way, I think Pinterest is all about obviously showing you what you want to do, but what you might want to do and what you might want to try to do. All about sort of trying new ideas. So in that way, I think where the brand opportunity is not just bringing someone into an environment where they feel excited about taking action, but they're then inspired to take action on something they weren't thinking about because we're sort of drawing
The
that
magic
new
of
place in.
discovery
Yep.
and expansion. I love that. Allie, you get the last word.
Oh, wow. So from a B2B perspective, I think it's the people who power the ideas, right? So the stories and the real creative essence of the content really comes from humans. But where we found technology to be an asset, AI in particular, through our partnerships, like with MediaOcean, help to take that sort of creative story and repurpose it, whether it's to be adapted to be regionally relevant to local markets. You're also marketing to a buyer committee, so it's not an individual.
Totally.
So you're marketing to people at all different levels of the spectrum in terms of experience, maybe understanding of a particular topic. So you can use technology to help you personalize from that standpoint. So you're making sure that you're communicating to that audience member at their level of
So
understanding.
it's not so much about the core idea. It's about
That's
sort of
it.
making the
It's
core
it's about
idea-
scaling. It's about personalizing, and it's making sure that you're able to reach people in relevant ways. Even just something as simple as making sure that your creative is in the native language,
Totally.
the market you're advertising in.
Yeah. I think we're out of time. I have no idea because I don't know where Andy went. But I feel as though I need to let you guys go because you've given me lots of really good things to think about. Thank you so much, all of you. I could talk about this stuff for hours, but I need to let everyone drink wine now, I think. Yes. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thanks,
for
everyone.